the year 2000, and I never wanted to go there. It didn't sound the kind of place which had anything to offer me. So when in the year 2000 I objected as a matter of sheer rationality and justice that while Israelis were being blown to bits in buses and cafes during what was called the Second Intifada, they were being called Nazis for dealing with the perpetrators, I was astounded to be immediately attacked as a Jew. I was accused immediately of dual loyalty, of being too Jewish, and of waving the shroud of the Holocaust to sanitize the crimes of Israel. Well, I think you can see the same pattern in today's Labour Party crisis over anti-Semitism, in which anti-Semitic motifs about Jewish global conspiracies are conflated with attacks on Israel. At one meeting, Jeremy Corbyn noted of two Zionist opponents in the audience that despite, quote, having lived in this country for a very long time, they don't understand English irony, using the smear that as British Jews, they didn't actually belong in Britain. The Palestine Solidarity campaign is riddled with anti-Semitic comments such as that the Paris Bataclan massacre was a false flag operation to increase support for Israel, or that Kristallnacht was instigated by communist and Freemason Jews to promote war against Germany. Today, a German neo-Nazi group has linked to the BDS movement, noting with approval its efforts to isolate the Zionist aggressor state in defense of the rights of Palestinian people. The language of BDS and the far right is interchangeable. Those who say anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism would have us believe that all this is simply a coincidence. I say it is not, and that anti-Zionism is weaponizing anti-Semitism, and this is why. Let's define, first of all, what we're talking about. What is Zionism? Nothing more or less than the self-determination of the Jewish people in their ancient homeland of Israel. What is anti-Semitism? A delusional hatred and fear of Jews, Judaism, or the Jewish people. But anti-Semitism is not like other prejudices. It has unique characteristics applied to no other group, people, or cause, such as an obsessional and unhinged narrative based entirely on lies, accusing Jews of crimes of which they are not only innocent but the victims, holding them to standards expected of no one else, depicting them as global conspiracy of unique malice and power. Amazing, anti-Zionism has exactly the same characteristics. Don't get me wrong, criticism of Israel's policies, robust criticism, is entirely legitimate, but anti-Zionism is different. Anti-Zionism demonizes, dehumanizes, and delegitimizes Israel in order to bring about its destruction. You may hear some of this slander this evening. The lie, for example, that Israel's an apartheid state, when Israeli Arabs have equal civil and religious rights. The lie of ethnic cleansing, when the Arab population in the disputed territories has more than quadrupled since Israel's rebirth in 1948. The lie that the Israelis are willful child killers, when they in fact go to unique lengths to avoid killing civilians in their always defensive wars, and when the ratio of civilians to fighters that the Israelis kill is at least 3 or 4 times better than any other country, including Britain. The lie of Israel's human rights violations, when it's the only country in the Middle East where Arab, Muslims and Christians, women and gays can live in freedom and safety. Fundamentally, anti-Zionism is based on the big lie that the Jews seized and occupied another people's land. But history and law show that's completely untrue. The Jews are the only extant indigenous people of the land. Israel was their kingdom more than 3,000 years ago. Driven out when it was occupied, they maintained a continuous presence in the land under the waves of colonialism, Assyrian, Roman, Abbasid, Mamluk, Ottoman, the British. They fought off Arab colonialists to re-establish their state in 1948 and are still fighting off Arab colonialism. The Palestine Mandate of 1922, which parceled out the former Ottoman Empire, enshrined their right to settle throughout that land, a right that endures unaltered in international law. The law also entitles Israel to hold on to land seized from its attackers while that land remains the launchpad for attacks, demonstrably true. The Jews are therefore fully entitled to live in both Israel and the disputed territories, even though they have always agreed to share it with those Arabs who lay a claim to it. But the Palestinians have refused to share it and have responded to repeated offers of a state of their own with terrorism and war. Israel is the only place where Jewish peoplehood makes sense, but anti-Zionism singles out the Jewish people alone as having no right to their homeland. Of course, many groups aspire to a homeland, but Israel is not an inspiration. Israel is a country. No other actual country is singled out for destruction and the mass murder that would inescapably follow. No one tells the Kurds, for example, their aspiration to a homeland is illegitimate and racist. People say Zionism is racism because of the big lie the Jews stole the land. Anti-Zionism thus writes the Jews uniquely out of their own history. It is an anti-Jewish calumny. Now, people say anti-Zionism can't be anti-Semitism because some Jews are anti-Zionist. Very true. But in fact, there have always been Jewish anti-Semites, Karl Marx, to name but one, who wrote, quote, "The emancipation of the Jews is the emancipation of mankind from Judaism." Yes, a small fringe of ultra-Orthodox Jews campaigns against the state of Israel, but they nevertheless pray every day that the Jews should return to live in Zion free of foreign rule. Their beef is they think the return in Israel is premature and should happen under different conditions, so their problem is a matter of timing. What they do not believe is the core doctrine of anti-Semitism, that the Jews have no right to the land of Israel. Now, there's a vital distinction to be made between anti-Semites and anti-Semitism. Many, many decent people believe these lies about Israel out of ignorance or ideology. That does not make them necessarily anti-Semites. But the discourse they endorse is still anti-Semitism's current mutation. Moreover, by supporting Palestinianism, they are supporting not just anti-Zionism, but anti-Semitism too. The Palestinians' real agenda, not two states, but exterminating Israel and replacing it by Palestine, as they repeatedly have told us over the years, is based on an anti-Jewish animus. The evidence of this is all around. Mahmoud Abbas's doctorate in Holocaust denial, his hero worship of the 1930s Grand Mufti in Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who made a pact with Hitler to exterminate every Jew in the Middle East, the grotesque Nazi-style imagery of Palestinian propaganda, such as sermons claiming the Jews are the fabricators of history, who dance and live on the body parts of others, there is no global corruption their rabbis did not allow, Palestinian claims that the Jews are behind 9/11 and that they control the world's media, finance, and US foreign policy. This unhinged, murderous anti-Semitism drives the Palestinian cause. Does anyone therefore seriously suggest that people in this country who support this cause and who say that the Jews were behind 9/11 and controlled the world's media, finance, and US foreign policy, that this really is just a coincidence? And if our opponents this evening really do believe anti-Zionism is free from anti-Semitism, will they denounce this Palestinian agenda of genocidal Nazi-style Jew hatred? This is not an academic debate. When I grew up in London, anti-Semitism was confined to a few nutters on the fringes who were treated as pariahs, and now it's been legitimized. Not surprisingly, anti-Semitic attacks are running at record levels, and what's so distressing is to hear our right as Jews to our own peoplehood being singled out as illegitimate, and to hear the unhinged and obsessional lies and distortions about Israel become the default position of fashionable conversation. And then, on top of that, then to be told that the claim that people like myself make that these are anti-Semitic conspiracy theories is itself a conspiracy got up by the Israel embassy. And it's supposed to be we Jews who have no sense of English irony. Anti-Semitism, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, always attacks Jews as a collective. First, it attacked us as a religion. Then it attacked us as a race of people. Now it attacks us as a people, as the collective Jew in Israel, with exactly the same characteristics as Jew hatred through the centuries. The aim to be free of Jews now takes the form of the aim to be free of the Jewish state. Anti-Zionists treat Israel as the Jew among nations, to be uniquely vilified, slandered, and exterminated. That, ladies and gentlemen, is why anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism.